Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. In today's video, what we're going to do is revisit ThinLinc. It's my favorite remote desktop solution for Linux, and in today's video, what I'm going to do is show you the process of setting up a cluster of ThinLinc servers. And this is really great because if you use this in a business, it really does help you scale your solution to meet the demand of users. You can add additional servers to your cluster anytime you need to, and that, well, helps you keep up with the demand, and that's a very great thing. And in today's video, you're going to see the entire process step by step. If you're new to ThinLinc, well, here's a quick rundown. It's a Linux-first remote desktop platform that lets you access a Linux desktop session from anywhere. You could use it for personal remote access, or you could build a centralized remote desktop environment for your home lab or business. It runs just as well on local servers as it does in the cloud, and the best part, ThinLinc is free to use. And I've featured ThinLinc a few times on this channel. It's my go-to solution for accessing a remote desktop. I really do enjoy it. In today's video, what I'm going to do is show you the entire process of setting up a cluster of ThinLinc servers, and you'll see the process step by step. But before we dive in, I just wanted to take a moment and give you guys a quick disclaimer. This video is being sponsored by Sendio, the makers of ThinLinc, but as always, all of the thoughts and opinions in this video are going to be my own. If you're at all curious when it comes to Learn Linux TV's policies, what I'll do is leave a URL on the screen right now, and you can visit that page to learn more about it. But basically, the takeaway is that I retain full creative control over every video on this channel, and this video is no exception. And when it comes to ThinLinc, it's something that I actually use and recommend, so it made sense to partner with Sendio to produce this tutorial, not only to give you guys a fun project to work on, but also because I highly recommend this solution. Anyway, with all that out of the way, it's time to get started. I'm really excited to build this cluster, and I recommend that you follow along with me for even more fun. Hands-on is always the best way to learn. Anyway, it's time to get started, so let's dive in right now. To get started, the first thing we should do is come up with an intended design. Basically, how do we want the cluster to look? For example, how many agents do you want to have set up, and which Linux distribution should they be running? Of course, that's totally up to you, but it's a good idea to have an understanding of what you're building before you build it. In my case, I decided to show the process in Proxmox. Of course, you don't have to use Proxmox, but it is a very easy way of setting up virtual machines, and it does illustrate the process of what it looks like to build a ThinLinc cluster. To keep it simple, I installed Ubuntu 24.04 on each of them, specifically the desktop version. Of course, you could use another distribution, as ThinLinc supports just about any distro so long as they support the minimum requirements. And here, within my demo installation of Proxmox, you can see my 3 virtual machines right here. They're all configured identically, they're fully updated, and they're ready to go. Anyway, at this point, to follow along with me, all you should have to do is set up your preferred Linux distro on 2 or more virtual machines or physical servers. And once that's done, we can begin building our cluster. But there's one more thing I want to bring up before we get started, and I wanted to bring up file synchronization. In this demo, each of my Ubuntu installations are completely separate in terms of files and settings. They will be part of a cluster, but when it comes to the underlying file system, they'll each have their own. This means that if you plan on saving files, each file will be created on whichever desktop server you end up connecting to. In practice, it's best to set up some sort of file synchronization between your servers, so that way each desktop will have the same files and settings. Now, setting up file synchronization is beyond the scope of this video, but as an aside, you could always set up something like SyncThing or even a roaming profile with NFS. Now, I could create a video that goes over the process of setting up a roaming profile as a separate video. Let me know in the comments down below if that's something that you'd like to see, and if enough people ask for it, I might just do it. Anyway, with all of that out of the way, it's time to set up our cluster. And to get started with that, the first thing we're going to do is download the ThinLinc server package. I'll leave a URL on the screen right now where you could go to download this package. Anyway, here we have the download page for ThinLinc. You could use this page to download the client and the server package, and what we're going to do right now is go for the server package. So what we'll do is click on this button right here for administrators. So I'll click on that. And then I'll click the button right here to download the ThinLinc server software. All we have to do is fill out this form right here. And then we'll click this box right here to confirm we're a human. At least I think I am. And then I'll click the download button. As we can see, the server package is downloading right now, and it's a small file, so it'll download very quickly. And right here in my file manager, you can see that I have the ThinLinc server package downloaded. Now, this downloaded it to my local workstation. What we want to do right now is use something like SCP or some other means to transfer this file right here to each of the servers. So what I'm going to do is switch over to a terminal, and I'm going to go into my downloads directory. And again, there we have the zip file. So what I want to do is transfer this to each of the virtual machines. So I'll type in the IP address to the first of the machines that I'm going to be installing this onto. And that should be all there is to it. So I'll press enter. I'll type in my super secret password. And then I'll do the same thing for the next one. And then one more time for the third server. And there we go. Now back here on Proxmox, just to make sure that everything was copied correctly, let's just check out the console. I'll log in. Then I'll open up the file manager within the virtual machine. And right here, we have the zip file that we just transferred over. So we should have everything we need to start building our cluster. So let's do it. Anyway, to get the process started, what I'm going to do is use SSH to connect to the first of the 3 servers that I plan on including as part of this cluster. And that's the first one right there, so I'll press enter. And we're logged in. The first thing we're going to need is the onzip utility. I'm going to first make sure that it's already installed. And I do have the onzip utility available, as you can see right here. If for some reason I didn't, all I should have to do, at least on Ubuntu, is run sudo apt install, and then onzip just like that. However, I don't have to run that command because onzip is already installed within this VM. Now the first thing I'm going to do is unzip the server package, and to do that I simply need to type onzip, and then the file name, just like that. So I'll press enter, and that's all there is to it. Inside the directory, we have an install script, which you can see right here. So what I'm going to do is run that. So I'll type sudo, and then the name of the script, and I'll press enter. Now what this is going to do is walk me through the process of installing the ThinLinc server. It's going to ask me a number of questions, most of which I'll just accept the defaults for. The process is pretty simple, but you'll see the entire process right now step by step. So what we'll do is press enter to continue. And along the way, it's going to install a number of packages. This is the first one right here, so I'll press enter. Enter again. It's asking me if I want to run the setup process right now. I do, so I'll say yes. I'll press enter again. And I'll leave it up to you to read this license agreement, but anyway, I'll say yes to accept. And at this point, it's asking us if we want to set up a master or an agent. Now this is the first server in the cluster right here, so what I'm going to do is set it up as a master. It's going to install some additional packages. And it's just confirming the actual packages that'll end up being installed as part of this step. I'll press enter. Enter again. And for this, I'm going to answer yes as well. But also keep in mind that yes has a capital Y, and if one of the letters is capital, that means it's the default choice. So all I have to do right here is simply press enter. I'll press enter again. I'm just going to press enter through all of these prompts, and I'll let you know if anything needs your attention. But there's just going to be some additional packages to install, so I'm going to allow it to continue. There's also going to be some Python dependencies as well. Again, I'll press enter. Enter again. Now at this point, it's going to ask us for the external reachable address that it should be using. In my case, I'm going to keep it simple and I'm just going to choose IP for this option. Although, if you do have a fully qualified domain name already set up for your instances, that is highly recommended. And also, I want to take a moment and plug my Every Server video, a video that I produced to give you an outline of some of the first things that you should do when you set up any Linux server. Setting the host name is going to be one of the things mentioned in that video, and I'll leave a card for that video right about here. There's also some additional tweaks within that video that I recommend as well, so definitely check it out if you haven't already done so. Anyway, I'll choose IP for this option and press enter. I'll type in my email address right here. And there's my email address. I'll press enter. Now it's asking me to set a password for the web console. I will be showing you the web console later in this video. So for now, we're going to set up a password for it. Just make sure that you remember this password so that way you don't get locked out. So I'll type it in. Now it's asking me if I want to set up printer access, which might be useful, so I'll press enter. Enter again for this option here. And then enter yet again. At this point, it's asking me if I want to install AppArmor configuration, which is a good idea if you see this prompt. Not every Linux distribution uses AppArmor, but this one does, so I'll press enter to accept the default of yes. And now it's telling me that the ThinLinc AppArmor configuration has been successfully installed. It's giving me some useful information. We're almost done. And it's also giving us some information for how you access the web console. Again, you'll see that later in the video. We'll press enter. And, well, we're done. Now the next thing I'm going to do is open a new tab within my terminal emulator. And what I'm going to do is connect to the second server, which should be that IP right there. And again, there we have the zip file. So what I'm going to do is unzip it. I'm just going to repeat most of the same steps as before. Almost everything is going to be answered the same way this time around. So I'm going to go through this a lot quicker when I go through it this time. But anyway, we want to unzip the package. Then we'll navigate into the directory that was extracted. We have the install script, so let's run it. And again, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. You've already seen this process. It's the same thing again, except for one major difference. So I'll press enter, and I'll let you know when you have to do anything different. Now this particular VM I'm going to set up as an agent. We only need one master server for the cluster, and the rest will be agents, so I'll choose agent. And the second one is done. So I'll move on to the third server this time. And there we have the zip file. So one last time, I'm going to go through the installation process for ThinLinc. And we're all set. Now that we have the software installed on each of our servers, we can begin the process of configuring everything to run within a cluster. So let's do it. I'm going to start the process on the first VM, this one right here. The first thing we're going to do is run the tlconfig utility. It's going to be located at /opt/thinlink/bin/tl-config. And what we're going to do is inspect the agents that are currently connected to the server. Currently, it only shows the server itself, which is expected since we haven't configured it to expect any agents yet. We'll run this command again later to verify that we have all the agents listed that we should, but I think it's a good idea to run this command before and after, so right now it's only showing localhost, and then later it's going to show the other servers within the cluster as well. Next, we're going to run that same utility again, but we'll need root privileges to do what we're about to do. So I'll type sudo, and then again the same path, then subclusters, default, and then agents. We're going to add the equal sign to this. And then in double quotes, what we're going to do is include a list of IP addresses or fully qualified domain names that point to all the servers. So what I'm going to do is type in the IP addresses right here. And there's the completed command. Next, what I'm going to do is rerun the first command that we ran within this section, this one right here. Again, this is going to show us which agents are currently configured. And as you can see, we have the IP addresses for each of my servers right here. Basically, what we're doing is running the tlconfig command, which was installed along with ThinLinc. We're then instructing it to look for a series of agents to connect to, and I included the IP addresses for each of my 3 nodes. Anyway, right here we have a list of IP addresses, but what I'm going to do is switch over to a web browser, and I'm going to show you that you can actually view that same information from the web console. And this will be a good idea for me to show you the web console. It's really cool. So what we'll do is we'll just go up here, and we're going to type in the IP address or the host name for the main server, which is going to be this one right here. But we're going to access it at port 1010. So I'll press enter. And there's no certificate installed currently, which is why I'm seeing this particular message. So what I'll do is just bypass this particular error since it is expected at this point. Then I'm going to type in the username and password. So it's going to be admin for the username, and then the password that we gave it during the installation. And right here, we have the ThinLinc web console. Of special interest to us is the cluster section right here, so I'm going to click on that. Then I'm going to click on subclusters. And right here, we see our default cluster. We can see the IP addresses that were configured. We could also set a limit if we want to. But also, we could click on agents right here. And that shows us the list of servers again, but it also shows us their weight or their score. And anytime someone tries to connect to this solution, the controller is going to route them to the best possible server with the highest score. In this case, each of these servers have a score of 100, so none of them will be deprioritized. Anyway, let's go back to the terminal. And what we're going to do is configure the other 2 servers. The first server was already configured with the IP addresses of the nodes that it expects to receive connections from. But the thing is, these other 2 servers, they were not configured to reach the master server yet. So what we're going to do is take care of that right now. So what we'll do is type sudo, and then the path to the tlconfig utility. And this tells this particular agent which server it should be reporting to. So I'll press enter. And then next we're going to configure another setting. And what we'll do is type the same IP address again, and you could also use a fully qualified domain name if you have one set up. And we're going to add port 300 here, and then backslash just like that. So that's going to redirect the web access, the login page essentially, to that particular node. So I'll press enter. And that should be all there is to it. Now all I have to do is copy each of these commands, and I'm simply going to paste it into the other server. And there we have it. I'll press enter. And again, I'll press enter. So now we have each of these 2 servers configured. There's one more command that we need to run on each. Now that we've updated the configuration, we need to restart some services. So what I'll do is type sudo, then systemctl, then restart. And the first is the VSM agent, and then also TL web access. So we're going to restart those services. And again, I'm going to copy that command and run it on the other server. And there it is. So I'll press enter. And you know what? That's all there is to it when it comes to setting up a ThinLinc cluster, but how do we access it? For that, we'll use the ThinLinc client application, and you can set that up on Windows, Mac, and of course, Linux. All you need to do is access the download page for the client software and download the appropriate package for your operating system. Once you have the client installed, you'll find it in your platform's application list, and the process from here will be the same across every operating system. So what I'll do is switch over to a browser. And here we have it. So I'll just open up the ThinLinc download page. Which is right here, so I'll click on that. And here we get a list of downloads for the ThinLinc client application. As you can see, we have several different things that are supported. What I'm going to do is download the deb file because I'm running Ubuntu. This also works on Debian. So what I'll do is click right here to download it. And we can see that it's downloading right now. In fact, it's already done. If I go to my downloads folder, you'll see right here we have the deb file. So what I'm going to do is double click on it. I'm going to click install. And now that we've done that, it should be available in my application list. And here it is. We have the ThinLinc client. So what I'll do is click on it. And here we have the client. Now, the thing is, the text is kind of small, so I'm going to zoom into this so you can see it better. This only happens on 4K displays, and Sendio, the makers of ThinLinc, they're already aware of this and they're already planning a fix for it. But basically, all we have to do is type in the IP address or the fully qualified domain name to the main node. In my case, I'll type in the IP address. I'm also going to click on Options. Then under Security, what I'm going to do is leave this on Password. Now, password is the default, but the reason why I brought this up is because public key is going to be the best way of accessing this. I have other videos that teach you how to create SSH keys, and in fact, I'll leave a card for a video right about here that'll walk you through the process. But for now, we're going to keep this simple and leave it on password, so click OK. Then what I'll do is type in my password for my particular user account, and I made the password the same on each of the servers. So what I'll do is type it in. I'll press enter. And now we're starting our connection. This is the first time that I've ever connected to this particular server with a ThinLinc client. So what I'll do is just click Start. And now I'm connected to an Ubuntu desktop. How cool is that? What I'll do is just make this a little larger. But anyway, as we see right here, we have an Ubuntu desktop running through the ThinLinc client. How cool is that? Now here in the web console, another thing that we could do is view active sessions. Since I just created a session, we should see one. So what we'll do is click Status right here. Then we'll click on Sessions. And right here, we see my session. I just wanted to show you this because as you manage this particular solution and more people connect to it, you'll see more users here on this list. Now I'm just one person, so you only see me at this time. But if you had other users that were using the solution, you'll see them here as well. And in fact, since I'm here in the console, why don't I just show it off? You've already seen a few things that we could do in the cluster. For example, right here, we have a list of sessions. And you've already seen the fact that you can go to Cluster and then Agents and view the scores for each of the servers that are included within your cluster. But what else can you do with this particular console? Another thing I want to show you is that you can actually prevent new connections from being started on a particular server. Say, for example, you want to take a server down to perform maintenance or something like that. What you could do is click the box right here and turn on draining mode for any of your agents. If you do this, then the ThinLinc cluster will not route any new sessions to that particular server. Again, this is great if you want to make sure that no one is connected. It won't disconnect current sessions, but it will prevent new ones from being initiated. And again, that's good for maintenance. Maybe you don't want to interrupt anyone's work, but you also want to prevent new sessions from starting. And then, when the last session disconnects, no new sessions will be created. This is just one thing that you could do with the console, but it's pretty cool. Anytime you want to perform maintenance, this is something that you should consider doing. But anyway, what I'll do is just click through this console right here and show you what you could do with it. We have the welcome screen, which is where we started when we first logged into the console. We have a system health screen as well, and that tells us if the processes here are running and are healthy. Another thing you could do is see whether or not a user exists on a target server. So, for example, if I wanted to make sure that my user was created on this server, I could type in my username here. I'll click the test button. And here we see successful lookup. I could also type in a group as well. So if I want to make sure my group for my user exists, I could also do that. And as you can see, it was successful. And this might be useful if you don't have synchronized user accounts across your servers. Maybe you have a username and you're not sure whether or not you've created that on a particular server. Now keep in mind, right now I am logged into the web console for this particular server. Each one will have their own. And when I entered my username and group here, I'm testing to find out whether or not my user and group exists on this server. You can repeat this process on the other servers as well to make sure that the user account also exists there. And that's a way that you can make sure that an account exists, and if it doesn't, you can go ahead and create it. Moving on, we'll click on Status. Right here, for example, you could check license usage. Now, ThinLinc will give you 10 licenses for free, so if you have fewer than 10 users, you shouldn't need a license. But if it is something that you might need, for example, if you're using ThinLinc at a company, you might need to purchase more licenses, and if you do, you'll see their usage right here. We also see some system load information and session information, although we've already checked the sessions earlier. We could click on licenses if we want to do that, to get even more information about licensing. But I don't have any licenses, so we're not going to see anything right here. We can also click on Load, and what this will do is give us our system load. And right now, it's basically telling us how many users are using the cluster. Here we have sessions, which we saw earlier. If we want to inspect the cluster, then we could do that right here, which you saw me do earlier, but it's really cool to have full visibility to this. You can click on Services, and this gives us the opportunity to configure the master service if we want to do that. We could stop the service if we want to perform maintenance. We could also set a maximum number of user sessions if we want to do that. And right here it says we can include 0 for no limit if we don't want there to be a limit. If we want to restrict access to particular groups, that might be a great thing to do. Maybe you might create a remote desktop users group or something like that, and then make your users a member of that group. And with that, you can restrict access to ThinLinc to particular users if that's something that you want to do. Also, we can stop the agent service. And if we want to change how it's reachable, for example, maybe you set it up by IP address like I did, and then later you want to change it to host name, you could do that. You can click on Profiles, and that'll give us the ability to create introduction text, for example. And that's a message that'll show up when a connection initiates, which we could set up if we need to do that. We also have a list of profiles here, and as you can see here, ThinLinc supports multiple desktop environments. Ubuntu ships with a GNOME desktop. Now, since Ubuntu includes a very customized GNOME experience, it's listed here separately. But of course, you could always add a new profile. You could also deactivate a profile if you don't want a particular desktop to be usable. Most of the time, each Linux distribution will only have one desktop environment installed anyway, but as an administrator, you could set up multiple desktop environments if that's something that you want to do. We also have a desktop customizer. And this gives us the ability to configure the menu structure. And we could also view a list of applications that are installed on this particular server right here. As you can see, we have quite a few. Now, all of these here came with Ubuntu. Again, I used the extended selection when I installed it, so I'm going to have more software installed here than the more limited install. But if you're curious whether or not an application is installed, then you'll see it right here if it is. We also have menu structure as well. We could configure applications if we want to do that. It goes beyond the scope of this video to show you that. But as you can see right here, we have a handy web console that administrators can use to configure and view various things, which is really cool. And there you go. In today's video, we built a ThinLinc cluster. I had a ton of fun producing this content for you guys, and I especially love these hands-on project-related videos because getting hands-on is the best way to learn pretty much anything, and it's also very fun. When it comes to next steps, as far as what you should do next within your cluster, one thing that I highly recommend that you do is set up SSH key access. When it comes to using SSH, using key authentication is the best way to use it because it's the most secure means of authentication. In this video, we used password authentication, which is okay, but it's not really that secure. So, if you haven't already done so, I do recommend that you set up SSH key authentication for your ThinLinc cluster, and if you don't already know how to do that, well, I do have videos on this channel that'll walk you through the entire process. Anyway, I just wanted to thank Sendio one more time for sponsoring today's video. I really appreciate it. And also, if this video has helped you guys out, then be sure to click that like button to let YouTube know. In the meantime, I'm working on all kinds of Linux-related videos for you guys, so definitely subscribe to Learn Linux TV to be the first to see those. Anyway, thanks again for checking out this video, and I'll see you in the next one.